So we are honored to kick off this symposium with a talk by Dr. Stella Villarmea, who is part of the Philosophy of Birth Network and Complutense University of Madrid. And the title of her paper is Birthing, Vindicating a Visceral Body Philosophically.
Thank you very much, Luis. Thank you, all of you. Thank you, Anna Hennessy, for this amazing initiative, and the whole team for founding the society and for getting together to organize this symposium. Since I am the first speaker, I really want to give a warm clapping or a really hearted thanks for gathering us all here. I'm excited to be here. I'm Stella Villarmea, Professor of Excellence at Complutense in Philosophy at Complutense University of Madrid. I am the director of the Philosophy of Birth Network based at the University of Oxford, which aims to also bridge the silos between scholars in the humanities and social sciences and professionals in birth care. I'm a member of IPOV, the International Platform Against Obstetric Violence, funded by the European Commission, and I also volunteer at the Birth Rights Association, Birth is Ours, in Spain. I have published on epistemology, feminist theory, and the philosophy of birth, and today I will be talking about philosophy of birth, a blind spot in prevailing philosophy, because birth matters matter, and they matter philosophically too. How to tell our tales, how to listen to the tales we choose to tell, and how to talk about birthing philosophically. The title of my talk, Philosophy of Birth, Vindicating a Visceral Body Philosophically, suggests that interpreting the visceral body with the philosophical discourse is possible, but what exactly is needed? I think not only a philosophical interpretation of the visceral birthing body, but a vindication of that body and language. For let's face it, giving birth, has its language. And as any language, the language of birth has its hermeneutics and politics. What do I mean by the language of birth? Birthing women do not only bear children, they also bear language. Let's try something together, even if being in so many different parts on the globe. Please bring to your minds the sounds of labor, the sounds you made if you give or gave birth, the sounds you heard if you were close to a birthing person, or the sounds you remember if you listened to them in movies or documentaries. The sounds of birth or labor are part of what I call the language of birth. The language of birth is, I defend, a bridge between nature and culture. Interpreting that language allows us to cross the boundaries between biology and society. And indeed, it allows us also to somehow face many of the things that are going on in our present politics and political moment. Now, how do we interpret those sounds, this language of birth? How do we interpret the language of birth? Let me say it up front. In relation to birth, to its sounds, language, hermeneutics, and politics, we seem to face the following dilemma. Are we to interpret labor as a process ruled only by the visceral body? If ruled by the visceral body, those sounds are just that, sounds, screams, cries. Or is there an alternative? Shall we construct it? A hint. It might be that those sounds have meaning, that they are phonē in Aristotelian sense, that they convey a sense, a connotation, a significance. The dilemma entails the danger that acknowledging or emphasizing the role of the visceral body in birth leads to diminish our rights in the birthing room. Let me explain. As you know, most of our social contract is based upon mental capacity or rationality. That is why conceiving the birthing body as a visceral body has its risks, for it may lead us, them, to quickly conclude that the birthing woman is not in capacity. While if we push instead the understanding of a birthing subject as a rational subject, we might be led to suppress what is characteristic of many birthing situations that alter the state of mind and body. The dilemma is then either the birthing woman is taken to be in full capacity and therefore able to make, maintain, or change decisions, grant or not grant consent, and act as a full entitled agent, or she's taken to be in a special altered state of mind and body that puts her in a situation of non-capacity and perhaps non-agency in relation to decisions, informed consent, or fully entitled citizenship. For me, the key to philosophize about birth is to bear in mind the dilemma and its risks. It seems to me that the exit to the dilemma is to acknowledge both the role that the birthing visceral body-mind on the one hand, and the rational in the sense of meaningful body-mind, able to convey meaning body-mind, on the other hand, play during labor and childbirth. We should take it seriously that a woman giving birth, anyone giving birth, stands on the boundaries between nature and culture. We should avoid so much biological determinism as cultural determinism. Now, how could narratives be constructed that place birth in the circle of physiological and significant action? Finding words to describe labor and childbirth, exploring a language of birth, is crucial to building conceptual and birth care models that take care of those giving birth and those being born. So let's do philosophy of birth. What do the birthing sounds, the sounds of labor, mean? What must happen previously for a birthing woman to enter in a state where she sounds this way? I would like to explore what the philosophical vindication of the birthing visceral body, this new logos for genus, as I like to call it, might look like. So, vindication of the visceral. In my talk, Vindicating points to what has not yet been granted, but it is fair to grant, also in birth. Birthing, vindicating a visceral body philosophically, implies acknowledging that birth is related to our entrails, yes, and that such fact has not yet been properly understood or incorporated by philosophy. And what particularly will I vindicate? That childbirth is a founding moment of how society treats and understands human beings. Studying childbirth matters for understanding the innermost secret of the entire social order, as Robbie Pfeiffer used to say. In this sense, philosophy can explore the language of birth because it can explore the systems of meanings out of which our tradition comes. Placing birth as a meaningful, significant action sums up my kind of contribution to the philosophy of birth. I hope looking at the descriptions of the roots of action helps us to understand why I want to address the birthing body as a visceral body. Not only because we birth with our entrails, of course, but also because birthing with our entrails means all of the following: birthing from the womb, the core, the insides, yes, and also birthing with our brain. After all, the brain is also an internal organ of the body. In other words, we birth with our capacity, our reasoning skills, our cultural paths, our thoughts, our will, our decisions, our calculus, our volitions, our desires, our biographical decisions or paths, our experiences. We birth with everything that matters to us, that is dear to us, that is our values. So the challenge is how to talk about the birthing visceral body while expressing or while keeping the agency. That is, without introducing a loss of capacity, reasoning, or decision ability that might lead to a wrong model of birth care. Bearing in mind the dilemma and its risks, let's philosophize about birthing. Let's vindicate a visceral body philosophically. So, what is this area of capacity, autonomy, and rationality in birth? What is this new logos for genus I've been talking about? In what follows, I explain how we can protect birthing people's rights during childbirth. And to this end, I focus on the role of gender stereotypes in a particular area of maternity care, the capacity or rationality of a person in labor. Because the most enduring and influential stereotype about laboring women is that they do not have capacity, that they are not rational, that they behave irrationally. And from this perspective, the debate on women's rationality, choices, and decision-making, birth and childbirth, is a pressing battlefield. At stake is nothing else than women's entitlement to full citizenship. Please think of a poem by Gertrude Stein, a sentence by Gertrude Stein, cries, rose is a rose is a rose is a rose, it's rose. If you remember that, then just allow me to use this paraphrases. Cry is a cry, is a cry, is a cry. To introduce an example of a stereotypical bias thinking in the case of a woman in labor, the interpretation of her cry. A birthing woman's cry is considered non-rational behavior, a sign that she has lost control. However, it may be that a woman crying out during labor is being more rational, more prudent in the Aristotelian sense than we think. Ultimately, perhaps her cry is premeditated. Let me explain. A woman in labor is not a being from another world. She's keenly aware that our culture interprets her heart-rending cry as a paradigm for a total loss of control. You only need to watch the films. Consequently, in our context, many women think carefully before releasing loud cries. It takes courage if they are in a birth setting, not at home perhaps. It takes courage to emit the first cry, to try it out, see what happens, and if it seems good, to continue. Good being in relation to what is actually being attempted, that is, giving birth. But it may simply that a birthing woman knows, and I emphasize knows, her cry will help her because she has learned that guttural sounds emitted from one's throat open the birth canal. There is a direct connection between the muscles of the throat and those of the pelvis. An opera singer will use their pelvic floor to reach the highest or lowest notes. If this is the case, we will need to start admitting that women may learn in antenatal classes, in conversations, that crying out may help them. When the moment arrives, they try it and it helps, so they continue. They choose, test, evaluate, confirm. Why are we so reluctant to acknowledge what they do is rational, has reasons? Ludwig Wittgenstein, the philosopher, explained that the meaning of a sign cannot be innately interpreted. Rather, a sign needs the context of social practices to realize its meaning. The color red does not mean anything without a context. It only means stop in a traffic light sequence under our driving law. A cry during labor need not be any different. The cry is a sign of something. The patriarchal context interprets it as a lack of control, but the interpretative context may be different. We may read the guttural sound as a way of maintaining the rhythm of breathing and working through pain. Among humans, a cry can have many interpretations: an order, a limit, a mandate, a lament, a vindication, relief, mantra, impact, or an expression of pleasure, to mention a few. Why should the laboring cry not also be an intentional action that opens up an organ to facilitate entry to a unique existential space? Of course, this is very important. There are contexts in which the birthing cry means something else, which is why it is so important to remember that the cry is a sign. A cry can, for example, signify that the birthing woman is expressing her fear or her anxiety, her complaint, her protest. It might be the way she asks for an epidural. There are other explanations too. Further on during labor, a cry might cease being rational behavior in the sense of being premeditated, means to an end, or learned resource. So that with luck, at a certain point during birth, behavior which started for cultural reasons enters a distinct and interesting phase that I will refer to as physiological. Once a woman has tested the virtues of her cry, once she's confident of its value and has used it to transition to the next stage of delivery, her scream might become something else. For example, a tool for navigation or a loud mantra for concentration. Then her cry signals that everything is going well. She feels safe to land on planet Earth, a notion that refers to women's description of entering another time, zone, space, or even world during childbirth. In those contexts, screaming during labor does not mean being out of herself, but being truly in herself. To reduce the multiplicity of meanings and application of birthing sounds to a simplistic "she does not have capacity" is a sign of patriarchy. We need to address the multiplicity of voices on childbirth, their autonomy, and their agency. And this is what it means to say that the birthing woman's cry is a sign, is a sign, is a sign. I finish.
Thank
That
you very
philosophy has
much.
so often taken death. No,
Yeah.
I finish with a sentence or with a paragraph. Sorry,
Oh,
Luis,
yes.
for the
You
misunderstanding.
still have time. You
Just a
still have time.
closing
Perfect.
paragraph that philosophy has so often taken death instead of birth as its existential foundation is related in no small part to the absence of women from the canon of philosophy. And so it's up to us, feminist philosophers, to undertake a radically new meditation on birth, one that finally addresses the logos for genus displayed by the birthing subjects, authority, agency, and autonomy. And my work on the philosophy of birth is devoted to this enterprise. So this idea of philosophy of birth, a radical new meditation for philosophy, or a new logos for genus, a new genealogy that will, as Hannah Arendt, among others, do dig into new meanings and new ways of using and understanding what we mean when we do some things, for example, birthing. Thank you very much.